My name is Captain Victoria Hayes. After 15 years in the Air Force, I thought I'd seen every kind of deception imaginable. Intelligence work teaches you to read between the lines. You learn to spot inconsistencies. You trust your instincts when something feels off. But nothing prepared me for discovering that my own husband had been lying to me for months. It started on a Tuesday morning in March. I was home on leave. I was enjoying a rare moment of domestic normalcy while David was at his accounting firm. The mail had just arrived. Among the usual bills and advertisements was a letter from Premier Financial Services that caught my attention. The envelope was thick and official-looking. It was addressed to my husband. Now, I'm not in the habit of opening David's mail, but something about that letter nagged at me. Maybe it was my training. Maybe it was the way David had been acting lately. Secretive phone calls. Mysterious errands. That guilty look he wore when he thought I wasn't watching. Whatever it was, I trusted my gut and carefully opened the envelope. What I found inside made my blood run cold. It was a quarterly investment statement showing a portfolio worth over $2 million. $2 million that I knew nothing about. According to the documents, the funds had been deposited in increments over the past 8 months. It started with a lump sum of $1.8 million in July. I sat at our kitchen table, staring at those numbers. I was trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Where had this money come from? Why hadn't David told me? We'd been married for 12 years, and I thought we shared everything. We'd struggled through my deployments. We celebrated my promotions together. We made every major financial decision as a team, or so I thought. My hands shook as I photographed every page with my phone before carefully resealing the envelope. Years of covert operations had taught me the value of documentation. They taught me the importance of keeping evidence secure. I placed the letter back exactly where I'd found it and waited for David to come home. When he walked through the door that evening, I watched him with new eyes. He looked the same. Sandy brown hair slightly mussed from the wind. Wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. That familiar smile that had won my heart in college, but now I knew he was hiding something massive from me. "How was your day, honey?" he asked, kissing my cheek like he had 1,000 times before. "Quiet," I replied, studying his face for any sign of guilt. "Just catching up on some reading. How about you? Anything interesting happen at work?" "Same old spreadsheets and tax returns," he said with a laugh that sounded forced to my trained ears. "You know how exciting accounting can be?" I nodded and smiled, but inside my mind was racing. If David had somehow acquired $2 million 8 months ago, that timing coincided perfectly with the state lottery jackpot that had made headlines last summer. The winner had never been publicly identified. They claimed their prize through a trust to maintain anonymity. As I prepared dinner, I found myself analyzing every interaction we'd had over the past months. His new clothes that he claimed were hand-me-downs from his brother. The expensive wine he'd started buying, saying he'd found a great deal. The way he'd casually suggested we refinance the house at a lower interest rate. He offered to handle all the paperwork himself. It all added up to one inescapable conclusion. My husband had won the lottery and chosen to hide it from me. That night, as David slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling and planned my next move. In the Air Force, we have a saying, trust but verify. David had broken the trust, so now it was time to verify everything. When I had all the facts, I'd decide exactly how to respond to this betrayal. Little did he know, he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life by lying to someone trained in psychological warfare. The next morning, David left for work like nothing had happened. He was humming as he grabbed his coffee and kissed me goodbye. I waited exactly 15 minutes after his car disappeared down our suburban street before I began my investigation. If there's one thing the Air Force taught me, it's that information is power. I intended to gather as much as possible. My first stop was David's home office. He kept it locked, claiming he needed to protect client confidentiality. But I'd learned to pick locks during a specialized training course in Germany 3 years ago. The door opened in under 30 seconds. Inside, everything appeared normal at first glance. Neat stacks of tax documents, client files organized by date, his computer password protected as always. But I knew how to look deeper. I searched through his desk drawers systematically, photographing anything that seemed relevant. In the bottom drawer, hidden beneath old bank statements, I found a business card for Premier Financial Services, with handwritten notes on the back. The notes were in David's careful penmanship. Lottery trust established July 15th. Annual disbursements begin January. Keep separate from joint accounts. Victoria deployment schedule. Safe windows for meetings. My heart clenched at those last words. He'd been using my military service, my absences protecting our country. He used them as opportunities to deceive me. I photographed everything and returned the items exactly as I'd found them. Next, I turned to his computer. David thought he was security conscious, but his passwords were laughably simple to someone with my training. His laptop revealed a treasure trove of evidence, emails with financial advisors, research on tax implications of lottery winnings, and most damning of all, a draft email he'd never sent. The draft was addressed to his brother Tom, dated 3 days after the lottery drawing. "Can't believe I actually won," it read. 2.1 million after taxes. Victoria's deployed until October, so I have time to figure out how to handle this. Part of me wants to tell her, but you know how she is about money. She'd want to pay off the house immediately and put the rest in boring savings accounts. This gives us opportunities for real investments, maybe that vacation rental property we talked about. I can always tell her later when it's grown into something bigger. I sat back in his chair, feeling a mixture of rage and heartbreak. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, partnership, and trust. David had made a unilateral decision about our future, based on his assumptions about what I would want. He never bothered to actually discuss it with me, but I was just getting started. I accessed our joint bank accounts online and cross-referenced them with David's hidden portfolio statements. He'd been clever, I had to admit. Small withdrawals here and there, always with plausible explanations. A business lunch that actually paid for his financial advisor. Car maintenance that funded his meetings with investment counselors. By lunchtime, I had built a comprehensive picture of David's deception. He'd won the lottery 8 months ago. He established a trust to claim the prize anonymously. He had been systematically hiding the money while maintaining the pretense that we were still the same middle-class couple struggling with a mortgage and car payments. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I'd been overseas defending our nation's security, my husband had been attacking the security of our marriage with lies and manipulation. He'd stolen more than money from me. He'd stolen my agency and decisions about our shared future. That evening, David came home with flowers. Daisies, my favorite. "Just because," he said with that charming smile. "Thought my beautiful wife deserved something special." "They're lovely," I said, accepting his kiss. "What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to buy flowers for the woman I love?" The words that used to make me melt now rang hollow. As I arranged the daisies in a vase, I wondered how many lies that smile had hidden over the years. How many times had he looked me in the eye and deceived me? "David," I said carefully, "I've been thinking about our finances lately. Maybe we should sit down this weekend and review everything together? Set some new goals?" I watched his face closely, noting the micro-expressions that betrayed his discomfort. The slight tightening around his eyes, the way his smile became more forced. "Sure, honey," he said, "though honestly, there's not much to review. Same old mortgage, same old car payments. Maybe after your next promotion we can think about bigger changes." Another lie, another manipulation. I nodded and smiled, playing the part of the trusting wife while inside. I was already planning his downfall. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay beside David, listening to his steady breathing. I wondered how someone could compartmentalize deception so completely. In the morning, I made him his usual breakfast. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, coffee with just a splash of cream. I watched him read the newspaper like we were still living in our old reality. "I'm meeting some friends for lunch today," I told him casually. "Jennifer's in town from her deployment in South Korea." "That's nice, honey. Have fun catching up." Jennifer wasn't really in town, but David didn't know that. What he also didn't know was that I planned to spend the day confirming my suspicions through official channels. After David left for work, I drove to the state lottery headquarters downtown. My military ID still carried weight in certain circles. I'd learned over the years that confidence and proper credentials could open doors that might otherwise stay closed. "I'm conducting a routine background verification," I explained to the records clerk, showing my identification. "I need to confirm the details of a lottery claim from last July. Prize amount 2.1 million, claimed through a trust." The clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, checked her computer system. "I can't release specific details about winners who've requested anonymity," she said apologetically. "I understand," I replied. "I'm not asking for names. I just need to verify that such a claim was made on the date in question." It's for a security clearance review. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, we did have a jackpot winner claim a prize of that amount in July. The ticket was purchased at Martinez Corner Store on 5th Street. My heart sank even as it confirmed what I already knew. Martinez Corner Store was 3 blocks from David's office. He stopped there every morning for his coffee and lottery tickets, a routine I'd teased him about for years, calling it his retirement plan. Thank you, I said, maintaining my composure. That's all I needed to know. From there, I drove to Martinez Corner Store. The elderly owner, Mr. Martinez, recognized me immediately. Captain Hayes, how wonderful to see you. How's that husband of yours? Haven't seen him around lately. He's well, thank you. Actually, I wanted to ask you about something. Last summer you had someone win a big lottery prize here, didn't you? Mr. Martinez's eyes lit up. Oh yes, the big jackpot. $2.1 million. Can you believe it? In all my years running this store, never had a winner that big. The lottery commission even gave me a bonus for selling the winning ticket. That must have been exciting, I said, my mouth dry. Did you know the winner? He leaned in conspiratorially. Well, they never announced the name. Winner chose to stay anonymous, but between you and me, it was someone who'd been buying tickets here for years. Regular customer. Nice fellow, always polite. Reminded me a lot of your David, actually. Though I'm sure if he'd won, you'd know about it, right? I forced a laugh. Of course. David tells me everything. The drive home was a blur of emotions. Anger, hurt, betrayal. Underneath it all, a cold determination that surprised me with its intensity. David hadn't just lied to me. He'd involved our entire community in his deception. Mr. Martinez, our financial advisor who'd been telling us to save more aggressively. Our friends who'd listened to us complain about money troubles. They were all unwitting participants in David's charade. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my commanding officer, Colonel Rebecca Martinez. No relation to the store owner. I requested an extension of my leave. Everything all right, Hayes? She asked. This isn't like you to need extra time off. Personal matter, Colonel. Nothing that affects my clearance or duties. I just need some time to handle a family situation. Take what you need, she said. You've earned it. Just keep me informed if it becomes long-term. Next, I contacted Tom Phillips, David's older brother. Tom and I had always gotten along well. I suspected he might know more about David's windfall than he'd let on. Victoria, great to hear from you. How's military life treating you? Can't complain, Tom. Listen, I wanted to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Has David mentioned anything unusual happening lately? Any changes in his financial situation? The pause was telling. Why do you ask? Because I found some investment statements that don't match what he's told me about our finances. Another long pause. Victoria, I think you need to talk to David about this. So you do know something. I can't speak for David, but yes, I know about the lottery win. I told him he was making a mistake not telling you immediately. Money secrets destroy marriages. How long have you known? Since the day after he won. He called me, panicked, asking for advice. I told him to talk to you, but he was convinced you'd want to do something sensible with the money instead of letting it grow. I thanked Tom and hung up, feeling strangely calm. The confirmation I'd been seeking was complete. Now it was time to plan David's education in the consequences of betrayal. That night, I cooked David's favorite meal, grilled salmon with asparagus and rice pilaf. He came home in a particularly good mood. He was chattering about a new client he'd landed and complimenting me on the delicious aroma coming from the kitchen. You're amazing, he said, wrapping his arms around my waist as I stirred the rice. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. If only he knew how unlucky he was about to become. Over dinner, I played the supportive wife perfectly. I asked about his day. I laughed at his stories. I even brought up our upcoming wedding anniversary next month. 12 years, I mused. Hard to believe how fast it's gone. Best 12 years of my life, David said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. Here's to 12 more. I squeezed back, noting how easily the lies rolled off his tongue. Later, after he'd fallen asleep, I sat in my study and began planning what I privately called Operation Accountability. In the military, we never go into a mission without clear objectives and contingency plans. This would be no different. My goals were simple: expose David's deception, ensure he understood the magnitude of his betrayal, secure my fair share of assets he'd tried to hide. But I wanted more than just money. I wanted justice. I wanted him to experience the same sense of betrayal and powerlessness he'd inflicted on me. The next morning, I began making calls. First, I contacted Margaret Chen, a divorce attorney I'd met at a military spouses support group. Margaret had a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. Exactly what I needed. "Victoria, what a surprise to hear from you. I hope everything's well. I need to consult with you about a hypothetical situation," I said carefully. If someone discovered that their spouse had hidden significant assets, say lottery winnings, what would be the best way to protect their interests? Margaret's voice sharpened with professional interest. "How significant are we talking about?" "Over $2 million, hidden for approximately 8 months. "Oh my. Well, hypothetically speaking, documentation would be key. Financial records, evidence of deception, proof of intent to defraud. In California, this would be considered separate property fraud. The innocent spouse would be entitled to significant compensation." We talked for another 20 minutes, with Margaret explaining the legal landscape and my options. By the end of the call, I had a clear understanding of my rights and the evidence I'd need to collect. Next, I called my friend Jessica Rodriguez, an investigative journalist with the Los Angeles Times. Jessica and I had served together early in our careers before she left the Air Force to pursue journalism. "Jess, I need a favor. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to research lottery winners who've claimed prizes anonymously, how would they go about it?" "Hypothetically, huh?" Jessica laughed. "Victoria, what have you gotten yourself into?" "Nothing illegal, I promise. I just need to understand how anonymous lottery claims work and what records are available." Jessica agreed to help. Within hours, she'd sent me a comprehensive report on lottery prize claims, trust structures, and the paper trail that invariably follows large financial transactions. Armed with this information, I began building a more complete picture of David's deception. But I wasn't ready to reveal my hand yet. Instead, I decided to give David a chance to come clean on his own. That evening, I brought up the subject of our finances again. "David, I've been thinking about what we discussed earlier. Maybe we should be more aggressive about building our savings. I mean, we're not getting any younger, and my military pension will only go so far." I watched his face carefully, looking for any sign that he might confess. Instead, he nodded sympathetically. "You're right, honey. We should definitely be smarter about money. Maybe we could cut back on some expenses, try to save an extra $100 or $2 each month, an extra $100 a month, while sitting on $2 million. The audacity was breathtaking. "What about investments?" I pressed. "Maybe we should talk to a financial advisor?" "Well, those fees can add up," David said carefully. "And honestly, most of what they do I can handle myself with some research." "I'll bet you can," I thought. "You know what might help?" I said with feigned inspiration. "What if we each kept track of our spending for a month, really analyze where our money goes? We could even check all our accounts together, make sure we're not missing any opportunities." For the first time, David looked genuinely uncomfortable. "That seems like overkill, don't you think? We're doing fine. Not everyone needs to micromanage their finances like it's a military operation." The comment stung, and I realized it was meant to. David was using my military background against me. He was painting me as controlling and obsessive to deflect from his own dishonesty. "You're probably right," I said mildly. "I just want us to be secure, you know? Especially with my deployment schedule being so unpredictable." "We are secure," David said firmly. "Trust me on this, Victoria. I handle the books. I know exactly where we stand financially. Trust me." The irony was almost unbearable. That night, as I listened to David snore peacefully beside me, I made my final decision. He'd had multiple opportunities to tell me the truth, and he'd chosen deception every time. Now he'd face the consequences. The next phase of my plan required precision timing and flawless execution. I waited until David left for work the following Thursday, then put my strategy into motion. First, I drove to 3 different banks around the city and opened individual accounts under my maiden name, Hayes. I deposited small amounts from my military pay to establish the accounts. Then I set up online access for each one. These would serve as secure repositories for the evidence I was gathering. They would ensure I had financial independence regardless of what happened next. Next, I visited a private investigator, recommended by Margaret Chen. Frank Morrison was a former Navy intelligence officer who specialized in asset investigation and domestic cases. "Captain Hayes," he said, studying the documentation I'd brought. "This is quite a situation you've uncovered. Your husband's been very methodical about hiding this money." "I need everything documented legally," I said. "Bank records, investment accounts, any other assets he might have hidden. Can you handle that?" "Absolutely. In cases like this, there's usually more than what you've already found. Give me a week, and I'll have a complete financial profile." While Frank worked his magic, I began phase 2 of my plan: psychological warfare. I started leaving subtle hints around the house that I was becoming suspicious of our financial situation. I left lottery advertisements conspicuously placed on the kitchen counter. I bookmarked articles about anonymous lottery winners on the computer we shared. I even bought a lottery ticket myself and left it on David's nightstand with a note. Thought this might be fun to try together. David's behavior became increasingly nervous. He started checking his locked office door obsessively. He spent longer hours at work. He began having hushed phone conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. He was feeling the pressure, but he still wasn't ready to confess. So I escalated. The following Monday, I called David at work from an untraceable number. I used a voice distortion app I'd downloaded. "Mr. Hayes," I said in a disguised voice, "this is Jennifer Walsh from the State Lottery Commission. We need to speak with you about some irregularities we've discovered regarding your prize claim last July." The silence on the other end was deafening. "I think you have the wrong number," David finally stammered. "Trust account number 7749XK, I continued, reading from his own documents. "Premier Financial Services. Mr. Hayes, we really do need to meet with you this week to resolve these issues." I hung up before he could respond. Then I immediately drove to a coffee shop with a view of his office building. 20 minutes later, I watched David rush out, phone pressed to his ear, his face pale with panic. That evening, he came home looking haggard. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked innocently. "You seem stressed." "Just work stuff," he muttered. "Complicated tax situation with a client." I nodded sympathetically while internally celebrating the success of my psychological pressure campaign. The next morning, Frank called with his preliminary findings. "Your husband's been busy," he said. "Beyond the main investment account, I found 2 additional offshore accounts totaling another $300,000. He's also purchased a vacation rental property in Costa Rica under the trust's name." My jaw tightened. The deception was even worse than I'd imagined. David hadn't just hidden his lottery winnings. He'd been building an entirely separate financial life without me. "There's more," Frank continued. "I found evidence that he's been researching international banking laws and tax havens. I think he's planning to move significant assets offshore permanently." This revelation changed everything. David wasn't just keeping secrets. He was preparing to disappear our money entirely. He was planning to leave me with nothing. It was time to accelerate my timeline. That afternoon, I received a package from Margaret Chen, containing divorce papers and asset preservation orders. I also got a call from Jessica, who'd been digging into David's activities. "Victoria, I think your husband might be in deeper trouble than just hiding money from you." I found records of some questionable investment schemes he's been involved in. Nothing provably illegal yet, but definitely ethically gray areas. You need to protect yourself legally as soon as possible. I spent the rest of the day reviewing documents and finalizing my strategy. David had forced my hand by escalating his deception. Now I had no choice but to respond decisively. That evening, I cooked another elaborate dinner. David's favorite lasagna with garlic bread and a bottle of expensive wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. If this was going to be our last meal together as husband and wife, I wanted it to be memorable. David seemed to relax as we ate, even complimenting me on the wine. "This is really good," he said. "Where did you find it?" "I've been saving it for the right moment," I replied truthfully. I thought tonight felt special somehow. After dinner, I suggested we sit on the porch with the rest of the wine and watch the sunset. It was a beautiful evening. For a moment I almost felt sad about what was coming. Almost. "David," I said gently, "we need to talk about something important." He tensed immediately. "What about?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder containing copies of all the evidence I'd gathered. Bank statements, lottery records, Frank's investigative report, everything. "I know about the lottery," I said simply, watching his face crumble. "I know about all of it." David's wine glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on the porch floor in a spray of red that looked disturbingly like blood in the fading light. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, denial, fear. And finally, resignation. Victoria, I can explain. No, I said firmly, opening the folder and spreading the documents between us. You're going to listen. For 8 months, you've lied to my face every single day. You've made financial decisions that affect both our futures without consulting me. You've treated me like a child who couldn't be trusted with the truth about my own marriage. David stared at the papers, his shoulders sagging as he recognized bank statements, lottery records, and photographs of his secret meetings with financial advisors. How did you? I'm a military intelligence officer, David. Did you really think you could outsmart someone trained in counterintelligence? I kept my voice level, professional. I know about the initial 2.1 million. I know about the offshore accounts totaling another 300,000. I know about the Costa Rica property. I even know about your research into international tax havens. His face went white. The phone call on Monday. That was you. Among other things. You've been sloppy, David. Sloppy and arrogant. You assumed I was too trusting. Too busy with my military duties to pay attention to what you were doing. Victoria, please, let me explain why I didn't tell you. I found your draft email to Tom. I continued, ignoring his pleas. The one where you said I'd want to do something sensible with the money. The one where you admitted to using my deployment schedule to hide your meetings. David put his head in his hands. I was going to tell you. I just wanted to grow the money first. Make it into something bigger. You were researching ways to move our assets offshore permanently, I said coldly. That doesn't sound like someone planning to share. The silence stretched between us. It was broken only by the evening sounds of our neighborhood. Sprinklers running, children playing in nearby yards, the normal sounds of families who trusted each other. Finally, David looked up, and I saw tears in his eyes. What do you want me to say? I screwed up. I should have told you immediately. Yes, you should have. But more than that, you should have trusted me. We're supposed to be partners, David. Equal partners in this marriage. Instead, you made me into someone you had to manage and deceive. I stood up and began collecting the papers. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call your financial advisor and add my name to every account. You're going to provide me with complete documentation of all assets, investments, and properties. And you're going to transfer 50% of everything into accounts under my control. David's head snapped up. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm completely serious. In fact, I'm being generous. Under California law, I could argue that your deception constitutes fraud and seek a much larger portion. You're talking about divorce? His voice cracked. I'm talking about justice. You stole 8 months of honesty from me. You made major decisions about our future without my input. You used my military service, my service to our country, as cover for your lies. I walked toward the door, then turned back. There's something else you should know. I've been documenting everything for weeks. Every lie you've told, every evasion, every manipulation. If you try to hide more assets or refuse to cooperate, all of this becomes evidence in divorce proceedings. David jumped up, desperation clear in his voice. Victoria, please, don't do this. We can work it out. I'll be completely honest from now on. I'll do whatever you want with the money. It's not about the money anymore, David. It's about respect. It's about trust. It's about the fact that you looked me in the eye every day for 8 months and lied to me. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the man I'd thought I knew completely. You want to know the really tragic part? If you'd told me about the lottery from the beginning, I would have been thrilled. Yes, I would have wanted to pay off the mortgage and be sensible with most of it, but I also would have been excited about the possibilities, about planning our future together. Instead, you decided I was an obstacle to be managed, rather than a partner to be trusted. David was crying now. Not the manipulative tears of someone trying to escape consequences, but the genuine anguish of someone who'd finally realized what he'd lost. Is there any chance, any possibility that we can fix this? I considered the question seriously. Was there a path back from this level of betrayal? Could trust be rebuilt after such systematic deception? I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I can barely look at you without feeling sick. Maybe someday we can find a way forward. But first, you need to understand the full weight of what you've done. Tomorrow, we start unwinding your lies. All of them. I went inside, leaving David alone on the porch with the broken glass and the wreckage of his carefully constructed deception. Through the window, I watched him sit there for hours. He was staring at the documents that outlined his betrayal, finally confronting the magnitude of his mistakes. 3 months later, I sat in Margaret Chen's office. I was reviewing the final divorce settlement documents. David had been true to his word. He'd cooperated fully with the asset disclosure. He transferred the agreed-upon funds. He hadn't attempted any further deception, but the damage to our marriage had been irreparable. "He's agreed to all your terms," Margaret said, sliding the papers across her desk. "Half of all lottery winnings, including the offshore accounts and the Costa Rica property. Plus, he's assuming full responsibility for the mortgage and your legal fees." I nodded, feeling neither satisfaction nor sadness, just a kind of empty resolution. What about the business irregularities Jessica uncovered? That's been resolved separately. David's cooperating with the State Ethics Board. He's agreed to close his practice and work for someone else under supervision. No criminal charges, but his reputation in the accounting field is effectively finished. I signed the papers with steady hands, officially ending 12 years of marriage. Outside Margaret's office, I called my commanding officer to report that I was ready to return to active duty. "Hayes, good to hear from you. How did your family situation resolve?" "It's handled, Colonel. I'm ready for my next assignment." "Actually, perfect timing. We have an intelligence position opening in Germany." "Interested?" "Very much so." A fresh start in a new country sounded exactly like what I needed. That evening, I went to the house one last time to collect my remaining belongings. David was waiting for me in the kitchen. He looked older and more worn than I'd ever seen him. "Victoria, before you go, I need you to know something." I paused, a box of books in my arms. "I've been seeing a therapist," he continued, "trying to understand why I made such catastrophically stupid decisions. And I've realized something. It wasn't really about the money. What was it about then? Control. Fear. When I won that lottery, for the first time in my life, I had something that was entirely mine. No one else's opinions or input required. I'd spent our whole marriage feeling like the less accomplished partner. You with your military career, your security clearance, your ability to handle any crisis. The money made me feel powerful for once. I set the box down, surprised by his honesty. "But the irony is," David continued, his voice breaking slightly, "in trying to feel powerful, I destroyed the one relationship that actually made me feel strong. You never made me feel inadequate, Victoria. That was my own insecurity. David, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I just needed you to know that losing you taught me something I should have learned years ago. Partnership isn't about power or control. It's about trust and respect. And I threw away both of those for money I didn't even need." I picked up my box again, processing his words. "I hope you remember that lesson in your next relationship." "There won't be a next relationship for a long time," he said quietly. "I have a lot of work to do on myself first." As I loaded the last of my belongings into my car, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me to this moment. I'd uncovered my husband's betrayal using skills the Air Force had taught me. I'd responded with the kind of strategic thinking that served me well in intelligence work. But I'd also learned something about myself in the process. I wasn't just a military officer who happened to be married. I was a woman who deserved honesty, respect, and partnership in all aspects of my life. David's deception hadn't just violated our marriage vows. It had insulted my intelligence and undermined my agency. The lesson he'd learned about trust and respect was one I'd applied to myself as well. 6 months later, I was settled into my new position in Stuttgart, Germany. I was working on classified projects that utilized all my skills and experience. I'd bought a small apartment near the base and was learning German in my spare time. The divorce settlement had left me financially secure, but more importantly, I felt mentally and emotionally strong again. One evening, I received an unexpected email from Tom, David's brother. "Victoria, I hope this message finds you well. David asked me not to contact you, but I felt I needed to reach out. I wanted you to know that he's been keeping his word about changing his life. He's in therapy twice a week. He's working for a small firm under supervision. He's been completely transparent about his past mistakes. I'm not saying this to try to win you back for him. I respect your decision completely. I just thought you should know that your lesson had a lasting impact." I appreciated Tom's message, but I didn't reply. David's journey toward redemption was his own path to walk. It had nothing to do with me anymore. Instead, I closed my laptop and walked out onto my small balcony. I looked out at the lights of Stuttgart. Tomorrow, I had a briefing with a joint NATO intelligence team, work that mattered and challenged me in all the right ways. I'd taught David a lesson he'd never forget. But perhaps more importantly, I'd reminded myself of a fundamental truth. I was Captain Victoria Hayes, a woman capable of handling any mission, whether it involved national security or personal betrayal. I deserved a partner who saw that strength as something to celebrate, not something to manage or deceive. The lottery money was just money after all. My self-respect and integrity were priceless. Those were things I'd never let anyone steal from me again. As I watched the city lights twinkle below, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine optimism about the future. Whatever came next, I'd face it with honesty, courage, and the hard-won knowledge that I could trust myself to handle anything life threw at me. David had hidden his lottery winnings, thinking he was protecting something valuable. In the end, he'd learned that the most valuable thing he had was my trust. That was something no amount of money could ever buy back once it was lost. You know, sharing my story wasn't easy, but if it helped you see your own worth, if it reminded you that you deserve honesty and respect in your relationships, then it was worth every painful memory. Here's the truth, though. Almost nobody hits that subscribe button. I get it. Life gets busy. We listen, we feel inspired for a moment, then we move on. But you clicking subscribe? That's the only help I need from you. It's completely free, takes 2 seconds, and it tells me that stories like mine matter. If my journey from betrayal to strength resonated with you, if you believe other people need to hear that they're worth more than lies and deception, then please, hit subscribe. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply show up for each other. Trust me, I know what it feels like when people don't show up. Don't let that be us.